All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us here today. It is Tuesday, the 24th of June, and we're getting close to the start of the term here in the United States, those arriving for the fall. And so it is our pleasure to bring some esteemed speakers forward to help answer some burning questions for our students and parents. It has been a year of updates and headlines from the administration in the United States, causing some questions or some uncertainties. And so we thought we would do our best to bring to you some honest truths from where we are sitting in the United States about what the opportunity is for you as students and the families supporting those students when you come to join us here this fall. So with that, let me just do some brief introductions and housekeeping. I'm your moderator here today. My name is Audrey. I am a director for our university partnerships in North America with Acumen. It is my pleasure to be introducing our panel of esteemed speakers. We start with Dr. Glenn Besterfield, who is the Dean of Enrollment Management out of the University of North Florida, with a special specialization and special focus on student services, records and administration, financial aid, enrollment, ops, processing, orientation, everything to do with student support throughout this process, throughout his 34 years in his work. He shares some experience here for us today. University of North Florida is a public university based out of Jacksonville, Florida, which is a growing hub currently with billions of dollars of public and private investment pouring into local businesses, supporting a really cool AI adoption and tech center there in Jacksonville. So we're very pleased to have his expertise on our panel today. Likewise, and from a different part of the country, we have Dr. Cheryl Matherly, the Vice Provost and Vice President for International Affairs at Lehigh University, a smaller private institution based out of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, which is only about 90 minutes outside of Manhattan. Lehigh is known world over for research, engineering, and business programs. It's a small but mighty force in the world of academics, and we're so pleased to have Dr. Matherly's expertise on our panel here today as well. And finally, as always, pleased to be here with Dr. Roger Brindley, our president for North America at Acumen, and my boss, a great and wonderful man who's going to be supporting us with his over 30 years of experience in the world of academics at some esteemed universities, including University of South Florida, a public institution, as well as Penn State University. So with that, that is a lot of talking from me, and I would love to open it up to our panelists to get the conversation rolling. So with that in mind, I would love to pass to Dr. Besterfield. Could you tell us a little bit about how Indian and South Asian students have had their dreams to study in the United States? How has that been realized on your campus, and does that look any different nowadays? How's that opportunity for students in Florida?
I definitely want to answer that question. I just want to go through just a little history, though, of we talk
Absolutely.
about changes in the last 6 months. These changes actually go back almost two years in America. And it really goes back to the strike down of affirmative action in America. Then we have the Gaza war takes place. And then we have the 2024 election. And from there, there's just a lot of what I call theater. A lot of words spoken, but words, as we all know, can be very harmful. We have DEI legislation, that's diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the elimination of DEI, especially specifically with research grants from the National Institute of Health, NIH, and National Science Foundation, among many other sources of government funding. We see DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency. We see DOGE come out and with an attack on the Federal Department of Education, employees laid off, budget cuts, the future unknown. But once again, a lot of theater. A lot of what has transpired over the last 6 months in America has been about illegal immigration. And we hear about deportations. We hear ICE immigration and customs enforcement, ICE agents all over the streets. Uh, that's reality. It's really not theater. It is happening in America, but it's involving illegal immigrants within America. Then we hear about taxing endowments, billion-dollar endowments. Well, the target was Harvard University, but many universities with large endowments. Then we talk about no internationals at Harvard University. Interesting. That was about a month ago. Once again, a lot of theater that did not take place. But then something that did take place 3 or 4 weeks ago was the suspending of visas, visa appointments. That has now resumed with some fundamental changes. And it's really about looking at student social media. And I just want to caution everybody. We don't know 100% what they're looking at, but I made a list here and I just want to read it off to everybody because I don't think you need to be worried about, hopefully, uh, not worried about something that you posted when you were 12 years old or, and you were maybe a little bit misinformed, but some things that they're looking at possibly as they go through the visa interview or the pre-interview and look at your background. Was there anything in your social media about hostility toward the United States of America? Was there anything about political activism? Was there anything about anti-Semitic harassment? Was there anything about pro-terrorism? So those fundamental four things, you might not have meant it at the time, but that is probably what they're looking at a very high level. To get back to your question, has anything changed? At the end of the day, yeah, the most striking thing that changed was the visa appointments. All of this talk about what I call the theater, all the talk about DEI, canceling of research grants, things like that, it really didn't have an impact specifically on international students on my campus. Now, the state of Florida does behave a lot differently than the rest of the nation. We were a state that did not practice affirmative action. We had eliminated DEI in the state of Florida several years ago, prior to the federal government doing it. So not a lot of substantive changes. In fact, even as we go back to the Gaza war, we had protests on our campus. We had a protest. It lasted about 2 hours, and there were about 10 students involved in that protest. There were no arrests on our campus. It was just very light. People are allowed to protest. Right now, internationals on this student, we are issuing I-20s. We are still admitting some students, but really nothing has changed from a campus viewpoint. We love internationals on this campus. I've always said, and my colleague Roger have always said, it would be great if all American students could do a study abroad to enhance, to become global citizens. But often that's not possible. The more internationals we can bring to the university campus, whether from South America, South Asia, Eastern Europe, the more internationals we can bring, that's going to create global citizens out of American domestic students. And when we create more global citizens, we really reduce a lot of the problems in the world. So, thank you.
Cheryl.
Okay, great. Well, Glenn, I appreciate you giving something of the kind of the walkthrough of the issues that have led up to this. And I completely agree with you that this is not something that just began in January, although it feels a bit like that. There certainly were predated, and I might even go back to say that there's even some roots to this even in the COVID pandemic, if we really wanted to deconstruct all of this and how we got to this point. But there's a lot of issues here, and I think some of the underlying issues are also kind of the political side to it are not just unique to the United States. We just happen to be kind of the outsized influence there in all of this. So I'm with a private university, a medium-sized private university in a different state, a different part of the country. So a slightly different kind of view than Glenn did, but I think that that will also be helping to this discussion to be getting something of a perspective of how this looks from from different institutions. One thing I would stress is that U.S. higher education is a remarkably resilient enterprise. And even though the headlines, and I read the headlines regularly in the Indian media to know the sensational stories that are being told about what's happening, the reality is for everything that we have had to respond to, very little has actually changed here on the campus. We're still delivering the same kind of high quality education. We're still involved in the same kind of research enterprises. We're still involved in the same kind of quality experiences that we have for the students. And so in many ways, the elements that I think are those features that attracted people to want to come to the United States in the first place haven't really changed very much. Now, we can certainly, during the Q&A, we can talk about the kinds of things that universities are doing to be responding, to be looking and be anticipating sorts of things that may be coming. And we're not naive to say that there may be changes, and there certainly have been some rule changes that we've had to respond to. Glenn talked about that related to the diversity, equity, inclusion, and that has certainly had an impact on certain things that we're able to do and not do. But we can certainly, but at the core of it, I think what's important and what I'm saying to the admitted students at Lehigh, that the reason you chose to come here and what we're still delivering, I can guarantee we're still delivering that at that same quality level, that same point. That part hasn't changed in this. I also appreciate Glenn's use of the term sort of theater and performative work. There is a lot of that. And I think sometimes the actions that get and are reported out, and I certainly see that in our own media, but also in the foreign media, that a lot of this is of course the most sensational story of, or the sensational impact of what may happen. One of the other things to know about the U.S. system, though, is that for all the things that have happened, it is still a system that is driven by rules and process and laws, and that also makes things go slower. And so if you look at what's happened, say at Harvard, a lot of that was impacted by what happened with court actions, and that is part of this because it's a way of kind of reviewing and moderating and ensuring that at the end things kind of work their way through in a way that that finds to some sort of way that is legal, constitutional, and we like to think sort of less damaging there to the institution, but also it allows for time to plan and anticipate to that. And that process is important to understand as well in this. And if you look at a lot of the issues that have come up that have been very sensational, that's been very much that process of how they've kind of played themselves out. I think the final thing I would add, and I would agree, and I know we'll come back to talking about social media here in a bit, because I think that's a really critical piece here. The other thing that I would add to all of this is that at the core of it, U.S. higher education has, from pretty much the time that the institutions were founded, been really rooted in having a strong presence of international students. I know there was a lot of some of Harvard's response to the government actions was that Harvard wouldn't be Harvard without international students. And I'll tell you, that's the same message I give to students that have applied to coming to Lehigh. You know, we've had international students. Lehigh was founded in 1865. Our first international students were here in 1868. It is just part of what we do, how we do it, how the university works, because it's how higher education works. It's always about bringing best minds and scholars together. So I think it's important to be separating what is said in this kind of the kind of context of a political environment for those things that actually happen to the campus, and what's really happening at where the enterprise, what's happening in that education enterprise, and being able to draw those distinctions. And again, I think we'll have some time in the chat to get into ways to do that. but that would be my sort of general observation about where things sit.
Great. Thank you, colleagues. I think what I would like to say around this, Audrey, and Acumen works with 14 universities across the United States, is on campus. Life has not changed at all. Our Indian students coming from Acumen to the United States are coming with their academic dreams and their academic goals intact. I would agree with Glenn about theatre. I would agree with Cheryl's perspective that international students are just central to what we do on campus. I think the message has to be, and I think this is a message that's very well understood in India today, is that you are welcome to the United States. You're welcome to study in the United States on F1 visa, but the expectation of the US government is you're going to get your head down and you're going to work hard on your academic goals. You know, you don't need to be out running red lights at 2 a.m. in the morning because you're going to get arrested. And if you get arrested under the current administration, chances are you're on a one-way flight home, right? So the reality is the academic proposition and the research proposition remains as strong and as profound as it always has. The reason why you were interested in studying in the United States in the first place, the reason why you're listening at this town hall today, that proposition remains firm. I would encourage you, and we may come back to this in a moment, Audrey, but I would encourage you to reach out to the WhatsApp groups for Indian students or the Indian Student Association at the university you want to study at or you're going to this August, and ask them how things are going. Get the student voice from your peers, because what they're going to tell you is, yeah, it's okay, breathe, it's okay. You know, and my last comment about Harvard, a remarkable institution. But because of its profile in global higher education, it's the kind of news that your media in India will pick up and will spread out. Harvard is not the norm. There are less than 7,000 international students at Harvard. There are over 1.1 million international students in the United States. So our advice is keep things in perspective. And if you feel the need to reach out to the admissions folks at the universities that you are going to, that you're getting your I-20 from, then please reach out. They're absolutely there to support you and reassure you. Audrey, I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, that's great. And it's a great jumping point, which I'm going to borrow. So doing a little bit of housekeeping in the chat. I love seeing everybody get engaged with some questions here. Just a brief reminder that we are talking generally about studying in the United States. We can't answer individual questions about your institution, your personal case, your housing application, or your enrollment plan. Unfortunately, that's just not our purpose here today. However, we know that many of you have representatives that based in your time zone that are there to help answer those questions. We do encourage you to get into contact with them. Or again, in the world of social media, the Indian Student Associations, students who've already graduated, students that you know that are attending the university already, or students even who are graduates from your high school that are already studying in the United States. All of these individuals are going to be able to give you some better ideas about, you know, if it's university specific, what your plan is, and also they can give you their personal experience about what it's been to study in the United States nowadays. So just reminding you that those resources are there. I'm sorry we are not them today. However, they are great and they are enthusiastic and welcome to answer your questions pretty much always. So with that, I will be continuing to manage the chat. Please put your details in there as far as Q&A, but I am going to move on to the next question that we have, which is a little bit about that student experience that students on the campus might tell us about. But Glenn and Cheryl, if you wouldn't mind, could you speak to us a little bit about how your international students on campus have been engaged over the last year and whether any of this has actually rolled down to impact them at all?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Go ahead, Glenn. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'll speak at a high level about just United States higher education. it's different than anywhere else in the world. It truly is. You know, the quality, 4,200 colleges and universities in America, largest educational system in the world. The quality can't be questioned. More universities in America in the top 20 than any other nation, the top 50 in the world, more universities from America, the top 100, the top 500. No other nation in the world can compete with the quality of American higher education. But it's more than that. And this is very important for every international student to understand, whether coming here as an undergraduate or a graduate student. American higher education is about turning, and I'm going to speak to the undergrads, it's about turning an 18-year-old into a 22-year-old. It's about developing all those social skills. It's about developing all of those leadership skills. It's more than just what occurs in the classroom. It's turning a young man into a man, a responsible citizen of the society. That's what education should be about across the world. American education is different. We focus on that. We focus on that just like we focus on the classroom and the knowledge, that practical knowledge that is employed. But practical knowledge, as you all know, it's really pretty much the same anywhere in the world. We use the same darn textbooks. In the United Kingdom, we use the same textbooks in America. That's practical knowledge. So you're trying to get something more about it. And to really get to the South Asian students, it's about that engagement in campus, becoming a part of campus life, joining all those organizations. And that is alive and well on every single university campus. You know, we promote as universities, hey, we have 600 student organizations on our campus for you to join, for you to get involved with, to meet American students, as I talked about earlier. So that is all alive and well, and we do it better than any nation in the world. And that's fundamental to our educational system. I'll also say the outcomes of the degree in America are stronger than any other place in the world. And I'm really talking about those opportunities to do OPT, a 2-year STEM extension. There's no country in the world that offers what we can offer in the employment sector afterwards via OPT and the STEM extension. In fact, many countries that are destination countries for India have actually made more restrictions to working after your education. So everything is alive and well. Right now, we're just dealing with what I said before, a lot of theater, but nothing has changed. You know, and I wanted to piggyback on something Roger said earlier, you know, about running red lights at 2 a.m. or something. Look, there have been some, and it's across America. It did not happen on my campus, but there were some students who, and once again, threats of having their visa rescinded. That really hasn't taken place. But this is anecdotal because just talking to colleagues around the state of Florida, in many of the instances, it was because a student got arrested, as Roger said, or the other big flaw when you come to America is don't work off campus. Follow the rules of your visa and you will be fine here.
So I can give you a
appreciate
pic.
that.
Yeah. So
Actually,
let me
if you
give you.
don't,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Exactly. So I can give you a little picture of how it looks from our campus. And permit me to speak a little bit specific about some things here. But I think what I say is also can be extrapolated to the larger. I think while I can give you some specifics here, I think what the environment here is not atypical for other campuses. And this. So I have to be completely honest with you. A lot of the actions that have happened in the last several months have created some concerns on campus and some students feeling a level of anxiety. I think that is entirely to be expected because of the same kind of sensational information you're getting. Our campus, our students are hearing the same things. And and not knowing what that's going to mean. And of course, everybody has the same concerns. Can I finish the degree that I came to get? And so it's understandable where that happens. And so I want to be honest and acknowledge that that has been a factor on that. That said, that also is something that there has been a full understanding on the part of the university that that is what our students are experiencing as well, that concern is there. And I'd say there's been a number of things that have happened then that have really been focused on ensuring that students feel safe, welcome, and most importantly, have clear information on how they're going to be able to stay enrolled and making progress so that you can finish what you came for, which is to get the degree and to do what Glenn said, be able then to apply for OPT and apply for a job and that. So there's been several things. I mean, one, we have done a really, really stepped up the kind of communication and regular communication out to campus. And so lots of information coming from our Office of International Students and Scholars so that students, when there's new developments, getting information in hand and being really, really calm about the information, not, kind of reacting to what the headline is, but ensuring that there is a difference between what is being reported as possible, what is a threat versus what is an actual rule change on that. And so we've done that. That's another thing, we've stepped up the number of town halls that we've been doing for our international community. And so we've done some things where we had a university town hall with our senior leadership that also included one of our faculty in government to be able just to talk about the politics of change and what an executive order actually means and what can it actually do and that. And so some have just, again, really focused on getting information there in hands. We brought in immigration attorneys to campus to be available to give and have, sort of factual information for students to come in and just ask those questions about what does this mean? How might this affect me? Or what is this rule change as a potential to that? And so there's been a major commitment around those kinds of things. We've also seen then just a response on the kind of community needs that our campus students need. We know that we have some students who made a choice not to travel over the summer, not to return home. They're going to stay here in the US until they finish their degree. So there's been a real uptick in services here on campus this summer to make available summer housing, summer programming, summer services, not just for our undergraduate students who stay, but also for graduate students and for some of our graduate students who have their families with them on that, recognizing that there's more need for that because we have individuals who have it. And so that's been a second kind of thing that you've seen. And also then, I think importantly, just a continued messaging to our campus, but also to our community about we're not changing in this, that our international students are really a very important part of our community. And I was really, this really hit home at our graduation and commencement ceremonies. Our university president specifically spoke about this in his remarks to the graduating class, and in his remarks to our graduating graduates class, which sits at about somewhere around 35% international students. He talked about how, in his words, global education communities are the very definition of an American research university and an American learning university. What a message to have your university president saying that to the class, to those two graduates and their families and our community as just to who we are. And so all of that has been there. And that's specific to Lehigh, but I would say that's also what's happening and what I'm hearing from my peers elsewhere. Underneath that, our student clubs are still as active. Our Indian Student Association, which is largely our graduate association, is just as active. We had our Holi celebrations on campus this spring. All of those things still happen just as normal to that. So acknowledging that the same kind of uncertainty that's adding to just people making choices are certainly kind of present on campus. We'd be lying if we said that wasn't the case. However, acknowledging that and the university is stepping right up there to be in place to, again, ensure that students know what to do, what's fact, what's really changed, and to know that in this case, Lehigh really has their back, that we're doing everything we can to ensure that our students will be successful, meet their goals, what they came here to get, earn their degree, and be able to go on and start their postgraduate opportunities, whatever they may be.
Amazing.
I think
Yeah.
what I would simply say to this, and I'll make a comment to parents. I hope what you're hearing from Glenn and Cheryl to the parents on this call is that your students are going to be safe and secure and cared for. Nothing changes there. And that's our commitment as a higher education sector to you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm aware we're halfway through, Audrey, and I know you're getting questions, and some of them I'm sure are pretty darn good. So direct us as you'd like to.
Thank you kindly. So actually, so to a point that I'm going to pick up from Cheryl, somebody has posted, some of those things that we do have to do to be realistic in the new situation, which is, look, I'm a country that might be from the travel ban list. What is my university potentially going to do to pivot if I end up on a travel ban list? Or, hey, I now have to carry my passport around. So, Cheryl, as Lehigh has clearly pivoted to support its students when it gets these responses,
Right.
could you talk a little bit about how you might handle those situations for incoming cohort?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So one of the things that we are, and this is going to be true on every U.S. university, committed to making sure that students know how to maintain compliance. Because part of this is that we have to do that in order to be able to enroll international students on our campuses. We have to have robust structures to be able to advise and manage those compliance operations. That's really kind of wonky sounding, but I will tell you, in this environment, this should actually give you a lot of confidence, because it means that there are teams that just do this kind of work and follow these kind of rules and regulation changes. I've got an entire office staff that's what they do, and following this, and are very, very knowledgeable on those details of these rule changes as they happen, on that. And that's a requirement. That's not just Lehigh, that's every U.S. university. You got to have those roles there to do this. And so a number of things. So I think what does cause some stress is the fact that these rules, that they can happen and they can change rapidly, and people want to know, how do I know? What do I need to do? One, that there will be people that are going to communicate what you need to know that affects your status immediately on things. So, for example, when some of the rules changed around what kind of documentation a student might need to carry with them, we had very clear information that went out directly to students. We have a web page where we keep that information current. We have put it out through our social media, and we discussed it during town halls. That was another of the things that was discussed with when our immigration attorneys were here. So lots of places where there are ways ensuring that individuals get information. I do say that as you're coming, just as Roger was saying, you need to be thinking about, responsible activities and keeping your head down on that. It's also your responsibility. This would be true even if it wasn't the current kind of climate. It is your responsibility to also follow information and do all you can, to be maintaining your status. You have a responsibility on that as well, but your university is going to make sure that you get that kind of information around that. The other thing is that, things like travel bans, on the other hand, can sound really, really, really scary because, oh my gosh, it's a travel ban, that. And that is going to impact students who, for places that have been placed on a travel ban list, and if you are not yet in the United States, that is going to be an impact. But if you're already in the United States, that is less an impact. So, for example, in the first different country, but in the bans that were announced this last month, one of the countries on that list is Iran. Lehigh happens to enroll a large number of Iranian students. Our Iranian students have been assured, we've been in communication with them, we've spoken to them about them, assured them that rule change does not impact their ability to stay and finish their degree. And in fact, we're doing everything we can, to help them continue to get their degree and to be able to be eligible for OPT should they choose to want to do that. There are some things that will be different. It means you will not be able to leave the United States during that period. But again, that's part of the advising and understanding, those implications on that. But if you're here in the US and that happens, and that rule change happens, you'll be able to stay and finish your degree. Now, something I would strongly urge as you're again getting information and getting comfortable with your choices, do make sure you are speaking with your institution about these same questions. And I think it is a reasonable question to ask about how the university's planning to assist you to finish your degree should there be changes. Now, it's very likely they'll tell you, we don't know because it'll depend on what happens, and that it will depend on the circumstances. But to let the institution know that you're concerned about being able to finish what you started when you come to the US, I think is a legitimate thing to raise, and to be comfortable with how your institution, your program, your advisor is talking to you about that, will help give you some assurance as you're making that decision, because all of us are really prepared to pivot rapidly because of the commitment to the communities that we bring to campus.
I really, really appreciate that. Go ahead, Roger.
I'm going to grasp the nettle here a little bit and just talk about visas, if I may, and my thoughts on visas at this time. Of course, the visa pause has been lifted, but we don't know. There are two things we don't know. The first thing we don't know is how quickly, at scale, US Embassy and the US consulates in India will resume rapid processing of appointments. The other thing we don't know is whether the new digital background checks that are now coming into place and that you have to identify on your DS-160 and so on and so forth. We don't know if that process, we were talking about this just before we started the meeting with you all, students and parents. We don't know whether that's popping your name into a massive AI trawling platform and in 3.5 seconds it spits something out or it doesn't, or whether that takes 3.5 days. We don't know. What we do know, and I think you need to take the wait times with a pinch of salt at this moment. In other words, I think it's going to take another week or two for these wait times to settle down and become accurate. But what we're generally hearing across India today is 1 to 2 months wait time. Now we're looking for priority and emergency processing. If you don't have your appointment yet, we understand that's a frustrating process of perpetually rechecking and checking for open slots, but you need to keep that process going. And do be in touch with your university that you're intending to study at, because they can often offer guidance from their perspective. And when you do get that appointment, be prepared with all your expedited materials. Bring all your materials with you. Don't assume anything, and be prepared to be asked why you're going to the university you're going to, why you're studying the major you're studying, what you hope to achieve at the end of it, and be clear, to Cheryl's point earlier in this discussion, that you are very clear about your intention to return to India in the fullness of time, because the F1 is a non-immigrant visa, and right. we just need to be very, very clear of that. I'm going to one more comment. This is not my recommendation. It certainly is not ideal. But a couple of realities that we know today. The same searches around wait time for India show that the F1 wait time in Bangkok is 9 days. And you can fly from Chennai to Bangkok for less than $200 return, from Delhi for less than $250 return. Muscat, Oman, a quick 2-hour flight from from Mumbai or Delhi. The wait time is 10 days. Now, if I'm a parent in this conversation, I'd like to see my son, my daughter, go to a consulate and embassy in the United States. But I think we may have to be sort of reflexive and thoughtful in this space as we see what those wait times really become in the next week or so. So that's sort of an observation. I hope that answers some questions in the room. If you work with an in-country representative at a company like Acumen, then please also be asking them what they're hearing. They often hear a lot before you may, because they're dealing with dozens and dozens of students, not just one.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. Again, it was a great time to talk on the status of where visas are. Again, that pause has been lifted, and we are still looking to see, how that's impacting the wait times, just to reiterate. And with that, again, you guys are probably seeing some of the same guidance that we are seeing. Dr. Besterfield did a great job at the very beginning, kind of outlining the 4 pillars that should really kind of guide how you are approaching your visa interview process. And much of that is just what we are understanding from what's issued from the administration as well. So a lot of those guidelines, when we send a follow-up from this, we can include those there, as well as just direct you to some of those key sources. From here, I'd love to take a minute to pivot to OPT. There was a point earlier about what is theater versus what is actually happening, which I think is really pivotal for OPT. There are a lot of questions in the chat as well about whether, the changes have impacted the availability of jobs on the OPT market. So I'd love to pass to Dr. Besterfield to talk a little bit about employment for his students and how that is affecting OPT or international cohorts coming in.
So I benefit from being in the state of Florida. The job market here is extremely strong. Florida is the strongest economy in America right now. OPT is alive and well. CPT is alive and well. It is federal law. It is federal law. So in that, yes, there's been rumors of a few representatives in Congress wanting to eliminate OPT. That was extremely limited and got nowhere. So OPT is federal law and alive and well. Specifically, and quite a few things in the chat I want to address, is about the job market and things like this. Look, you got to be careful when you come here about the major you pick, because it can be very competitive. Picking a major that is not in a STEM discipline can be very, very competitive. If you pick to major in possibly the social studies, humanities, that can be very competitive to get a job. Some business fields are extremely competitive, like marketing for the job market. Others are less competitive, and a lot of jobs available. Bachelor's degrees in business intelligence, very strong job market. Business analytics, very strong job market. And of course, as you all know, the healthcare, very strong job market. Health admin, health informatics, these type of things. Of course, as you know, the engineering market is unbelievable. Whether it be mechanical, civil, electrical, chemical engineering. And then I really want to talk about the true employment. And of course, and I was just talking to the director of our School of Computing. We offer 4 or 5 bachelor's degree in the computing area, 4 or 5 master's degrees in the computing area. And talking to the director about 3 weeks ago, where I had some colleagues from India were on campus, and we went and talked to the director, and he basically said, 100% job placement. Of course, I live in Jacksonville, is probably the hottest job market in America right now. If not number 1, we're number 2 hottest job market in America. And a lot of that is in the tech industry and the fintech industry and the AI industry. So we have that benefit here. I also just the employment in general, especially in the tech sector, as we look to engineering and the computing area, and in a lot of the STEM areas, it's been very interesting over the last 30 years. Indian students from South Asia, from Nepal, from Bangladesh, from Sri Lanka, have been coming to America for decades. And they have got their bachelor's degrees or master's degrees from in America, and they went on to do OPT. They got that 2-year STEM extension, although that didn't exist 20 years ago. That's more, that was about 15 years ago. I think that was put in place so that you could do OPT for essentially 3 years. Now, what you see out there in the corporate world, especially in the techs and engineering sectors, is the hiring authority. The hiring authority was an international student from India, from Nepal, from Sri Lanka, from South Asia. That is the hiring authority. You know, and my son's in that sector, and I mean, he tells me that, and he worked for he's been at a couple major companies that are in the tech sector. So the opportunities for you are still alive and well, once again. You know, I want to address a couple other questions here. So I'd be very cautious of the major, because some fields are extremely competitive to get jobs. Other fields are less competitive. I wanted to address one other thing really quick while we move on, because I know our time is limited. There's some things about safety in here, and I'm just going to touch on it. Living on campus or off campus, what's safer? There's a comment about New York City in here. Look, everybody, and I think Roger even said it, you know, I always tell internationals, you know, and you can tell this, I can tell this to my children, nothing good happens after midnight. And every place in the world, something can happen to you. You need to be aware of your surroundings at all times, and you need to be smart out there. You know, I'm at a suburban university. Suburban universities tend to be very safe. Rural universities tend to be very safe. Yes, some urban universities can be in high crime rates. So just something to consider. But universities in America, we do everything we can to ensure the safety of students. And it is really our #1 priority. And it's really one of our #1 risk controls that we look at almost daily on a university campus. What is our risk here? And it's the safety of our students, along with the faculty and the staff, of course. So I think I touched on a little bit about employment that Cheryl or Roger might want to follow up on, and OPT. So
Yeah, OPT has not gone anywhere. It's still there. I think another thing I would add to everything there that Glenn talked about on this is that it's important to know that U.S. companies are big supporters of OPT, because they see it as part of their talent pipeline. So that it's not just universities making that case. You also have a lot of kind of industry and company support on that. You also see that, and this is another thing that sort of speaks to this, in the US, there is concern in certain, kind of certain sectors, certain places where there are workforce shortages, and there's views that that this is, again, a way to be having highly trained individuals in that. And I will give you an example in our area. My colleagues in Philadelphia have worked really closely with the Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce and some of the kind of industry trade groups to identify industries in the Philadelphia area where there are labor shortages. And they're working on that as kind of ways to be kind of connecting that again with some of the international talent. So there's so it's here that. There will be a lot of noise around this. There will be a lot of rhetoric. You're going to hear a lot. And this is a place where I would say my advice is look for facts, look what has really changed, look at what action has actually happened on this, as opposed to just what's being reported on this. And that's my OPT advice. I also want to, if I can just piggyback real quick on that safety question that was in the chat as well. The other thing I would add to on the safety issue of just safety of U.S. campuses, I think the question was also sounded like it was kind of getting at, in this climate, should students be worried about the communities that they're in? Again, this is, you need to look at where you're going to be, your community, and ask a lot of questions on that to be the particular. But I would say, in general, one of the I don't think this is really changing again that much in terms of the way communities are reacting or accepting or taking their or welcoming their international students. I mean, the thing to know about a lot of the communities is that universities sit in neighborhoods and we talk about town gown relationships. We are part of the community, we are part of the neighborhood on this. And so in many ways, those neighborhoods, those communities that are kind of around that are all very concerned and very involved and very invested in the life of the campus and the students. And you're going to see businesses that reflect those communities right there around the campus. I mean, if you look at the restaurants that are right across the street from the Lehigh campus, it reflects our student body because that's who's coming in to use it, to enjoy and take advantage of that. And so by and large, I don't think that really the environment around the communities being welcoming to our international students has really changed very much. And I don't think you're going to find that. And again, I don't think Bethlehem's unique to this. You're just not really going to see that. Instead, you're going to be viewed as a student at the university, and just in the way the community kind of embraces the university as part of it, you will be embraced in that same way. And that's different than, all the safety issues you need to do and take seriously and follow what the guidance the campus is giving you and all that. But generally, in terms of just this being a place where are people still going to be welcoming for international students? Absolutely. That really hasn't changed.
I'm going to plow in here a little bit and answer a couple of quick questions, Audrey, while we've got a moment. I've had the great pleasure of visiting India on many, many occasions, probably 15 times, and I admire and love India. But I'm not going out at 3 a.m. In South Delhi or in Navi Mumbai. And you shouldn't be going out at 3 a.m. in New York City. Or indeed in my hometown, right here in Washington, D.C. Common sense wins this. When US students go abroad, I used to tell my US students going abroad, 3 things get you in trouble. Late at night, buy yourself alcohol. You remove those 3 things, you're safe and secure. And quite frankly, that's true for Americans, it's true for Indians, true for Nigerians, true for any of you on this call. A couple other quick comments. There was a question about when I pay from my bank and how much I pay to my university. You need to make that immediately clear with the individual institution you're attending. Make sure you understand the schedule for payments. Most universities give students till what's called the end of drop-ad week, but don't take my word for that. Make sure you understand that somebody in the International Student Department at your university will respond to that. Our dear attendee from Iran, today is not the day for us to be discussing access for Iranian students in the United States. I will tell you that Iran is the number 6 country for international graduate students in the United States. It's extraordinary how many Iranians come to the United States. But a lot of those students do go do their undergrad in countries like Germany, and then come to the United States. So they might do a 1-year master's in the UK and then come to the United States. And if I were an Iranian with a dream of studying in the United States today, I'd probably take that leapfrog approach. I'd probably think about the UK and Germany for this next year, maybe a couple of years, and then look to transfer. I hope that's helpful advice.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Hey, I wanted to touch on a little bit. There was a question about working on campus, why can't I work off campus and things. We don't control that. That is the federal government. You are not allowed to work off campus unless you do what's called CPT, curricular practical training, which is associated with, but the job has to be associated with your degree program. So
Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, but you can work off campus during the summer.
Yes.
You look at me like, yeah, no, I think you're wrong, Roger.
you can work 40 hours a week during the summer.
Okay.
Yes.
But during the semester, that's 16, and then that's 16, that's sort of 32 weeks with the break in between. So 34 weeks main
campus
academic year, only on campus and only 20 hours.
Only 20 hours.
Thanks.
And the reason is that the US government views this as you're here as a student. And there is the understanding that, yes, you want to, just like any of our students may want to work part-time to make some money to support your time and study. Some of this is where CPT comes in. It's related to practical training, internships, for you to be able to get to prepare for your as part of professional preparation, and there's kind of rules on that. But the question as to why are these rules there? It's because the US government views this as you're here as a student, and the purpose of your time here is to study that. I'd say in this one, the US is not unique. I know this is true in many other countries that have these kind of restrictions. I know UK is another one that has sort of similar restrictions of what you can and can't do because you're supposed to be there as a student.
I think the only thing I might add to that, Cheryl, is if you ask the institution you want to go to, can I work on campus? They're going to tell you yes. The vast majority of US universities have work study, have jobs on campus. Might have nothing to do with your major, but there are jobs on campus. Those jobs are not going to cover your tuition, but they may very well cover your day-to-day living expenses, your monthly rent, your food. So that's important. When you get that response, dig a little deeper. Everywhere will tell you there are jobs on campus because they are, but you want to find out how competitive, how reasonable is the opportunity. Because every year I used to have students, and not just Indian students, but students from across the world come into my office halfway through the year and say, I need a job, I'm out of money. And there isn't a job for every student on campus. There are few institutions actually that strive for that, but the vast majority of institutions don't have a job for every student. So dig a little deeper into that with your individual institution and make sure that's clear to you.
I know we're running out of time, but I got to follow up on just a little bit what was just said, and it ties into another question. A student was asking, well, should I start in fall or should I defer to spring? And this all ties into your work opportunities. So fall is the best semester to start because then you can get an academic year completed before summer. You are not allowed to work off campus in the summer until you completed a full academic year, which is fall, spring. If you started in spring, you would not be able to work off campus that summer. So always better to start in fall than to defer to spring. But I do understand that you might have concerns about currently what's going on now and you are deferring, but there is a consequence to deferring that you need to be aware of. So
I'm going to add one other thing from a perspective of a campus where we're actively discussing this with students. Please discuss with your individual institution and your program, because for many of the students, the issue about the concern about waiting in the fall versus the spring is really around these visa and visa delays. And there is, I can tell you, many campuses right now are trying to, mine included, are trying to be flexible with the arrival dates, recognizing that we are dealing in this kind of environment. However, there is a point at which it really doesn't make sense academically for a student to come, and it would be better to wait and defer to the spring. And in that case, again, those are all institution specific, even program specific kind of situations. And so I would encourage you to be speaking to your program and your department about those concerns. If there are things, if you do end up, all the things that Glenn said about the impact employment, absolutely, if you can start in the fall, absolutely the better way to go. If that is not going to work, then your institution still wants you there and they're going to work with you around what your options are on that. And that may be being able to do some things of some instruction remote while you're preparing to arrive, delaying and deferring any kind of scholarship or graduate assistantship or anything else that they've been working. The institution will work with you on that. So my other advice on this is that in this moment in time, discuss these concerns with your campus, your program, and your advisor to understand in this context on this particular moment, if there is a reason that would be reason for you to delay, and most likely it's going to be because of you just the time to get your visa, to understand how that may impact you, and what accommodations your institution is willing to make for you during that period, because I guarantee you they will work with you that.
Anything they can do, you know, 100% Cheryl, if you can get your appointment before the beginning of the academic year at your chosen institution, do it. If you cannot, be in very good communication with your institution. They will want to get you started. They will. You know, they'll suggest they put you into a couple online sections. They'll suggest you go ahead and get a September, October visa and go, right? But talk to them and talk this through with them, because as Cheryl suggested, they are going to look for ways to help you because they want you to come. They've admitted you. They think you're going to be a successful student. They want
Absolutely.
you to come.
And I don't think that there's a better note for us to end on, to be perfectly honest. Again, I think, you know, highlights of the day are that your university is always doing their best to adapt the guidance that they're receiving to get you the best possible information at all times. You're welcome on campus, you are desired, you are wanted, you create the global opportunities that we are privileged to be able to support here in US higher education, and we want to have you there. So please continue to engage with your university representatives, the communications that they're sending you as changes may happen. They're your best sources, as well as the students who've preceded you on their campuses. We know that you guys are well networked. You know where, you know, your cousins, your prior graduates go. The 12th grader that you were in soccer camp with went, you know, like, utilize those resources. You'll find that most students on campus are not having too much of a difference in their experience than they were expecting when they first arrived to pursue their American education dream. So with all of that, we hope that you feel you've gotten so much information out of our time here today. My extreme gratitude to Dr. Besterfield, Dr. Matherly, Dr. Brindley. Really appreciate all of your experience and your reassurance as you've weathered some changes in the past that we can all learn from as we move forward here today. So thank you so much. Appreciate everybody's time. We'll send a final communication out for all those attended, and we'll try to direct you to some of those resources we cited. So,
Okay. Bye-bye.
You're in the United States.
Thank you, everybody. See you this fall in the USA. Bye.
Okay. All right.